Good afternoon, Rotarians and guests. This is the Rotary Club of Toronto. I am John Fortney, the club president, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's meeting. After the invocation and the recognition of the traditional lands, please stay tuned for the playing of our national anthem, followed by the loyal toast. At this time, I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of many Indigenous peoples who have cared and worked for this land for 15,000 years. They include the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the treaty peoples of the Mississaugas of the Credit. Make your words kind, and you will be judged so. Give freely to all, and you shall receive much more. Listen to the troubles of others, and your own shall be diminished. Dream of what you can be, and a world of peace, beauty, and plenty will be there for all to share. Thank you. Now, our national anthem. Stand if you like.
Oh, Canada, oh, home and native land, true patriot love in all of our command. We'll grow in God's way, say the rise, the throne strong and free. From far and wide, oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God gave a land, glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Queen. Thank you, Brigitte and Glenn. Rotarians and guests, it's now my pleasure to introduce our head table. I am pleased to have the following people with me today. Susan Housen, a Rotarian since 1991, that's 30 years. Her classification investment dealer. Susan is a director and senior vice president with Research Capital Corp, a club and foundation past president, and is our Let's Be Personal speaker for today. Kevin Power, Rotarian since 2000, classification, law practice general. He is a partner with Coots Crane, our most recent club past president, and he is sponsor of our new member, who is Mark Yagani. You'll hear more about Mark shortly. Brian Wesley, a Rotarian since 1977, 44 years. Former classification, law, corporate. He is a partner emeritus at Blake Castles in Graydon. Brian is a past club president and is host to our guest speaker today, who is Sarwar Kashmeri, who will be more formally introduced shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, our head table. For our virtual meetings, we not have an official monitor to introduce visiting Rotarians and guests, so I will proceed. I do believe we may have on YouTube Rotary Niagara or Niagara in the Lake, so welcome if they are on YouTube. pleasure to have you joining us. And I do know we have a few potential new, I think 3 potential new members on the call today. So I want to welcome them and hope they enjoy today's meeting and see a lot more of you. To our visiting Rotarians, thank you for choosing our club for your makeup. And we hope that you enjoy today's meeting. To all of our guests, welcome to our virtual meeting. Please feel free to contact the office to find out how you may be able to make a difference by joining us. Rotarians and guests, please welcome our visitors in the tradition of our great club. Announcements. All right, number 1, you've heard this every week. As you may already know, but in case you do not, you should be aware that at these virtual Rotary meetings, that if you have your video camera on, that you may show up on the YouTube or Google Meet recordings or the live streaming. We ask that when you have your camera on, that you present a professional image, have your lunch earlier. Please be aware of what's going on in your background when the camera is on. If you do not want to appear, please turn off your video. We will not be able to edit you out later. And a second note, we've noticed that people have been accidentally removed from the meetings. If you click on a person's picture during Google Meet, you may accidentally remove them from the meeting if you're not careful. So please refrain from doing this. Thank you. Number 2, I have Sylvia Geis with me today, and she has an announcement to share with you. Over to you, Sylvia.
Thank you, President John. Our club's Diversity and Inclusion Working Group continues to heighten awareness and spotlight the expression of all forms of racism. It remains focused on working with our many communities to identify racism and to advocate for change. To fight against the injustices and denigration of minority groups, one needs to understand inherent unconscious bias and to be aware of the social and historical context of racism. Since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, according to Statistics Canada, the proportion of visible minorities who perceived an increase in the frequency of harassment or attacks based on race, ethnicity, or skin color has increased significantly. The difference was most pronounced among the Chinese, Korean, and Southeast Asian people. 60% of the reports were from Asian women. The Asian Gold Ribbon Campaign hopes to heighten awareness and to initiate widespread visibility against anti-Asian racism. For more details, please connect to their website. One way that we can support the campaign is to wear yellow on May the 20th. We are asking club members and others to wear yellow. Example, ribbons, underwear, shorts, hats, clothes, and so on. Because of the pandemic, the ribbons cannot be distributed. So be creative with the color yellow. Show support and participate on May 20th. The President's Cocktail Party is on Wednesday, May 19th, 5:30 to 7. When you attend, show off. Wear something yellow. Thank you. Back to you, President John.
Thank you, Sylvia. Now it's time for our Let's Be Personal speaker. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you, President John. Well, in 1976, I graduated from university with a BA in history. Due to corporate retrenchments going on at that time, summer job plans went in the dumper. I was not going to be a teacher, and I can't do math, so options were limited. I finally got a job as filing clerk at Wood Gundy. Remember when copies of reports were done using black carbon paper? My job was to separate the copies and send them out. Black was the clothing of choice. At Wood Gundy, I took security courses and acquired the Fellow of the Canadian Securities Institute and the Canadian Investment Management Certification. I had a variety of jobs in compliance, financial reporting, foreign exchange, etc. And if you've seen Mad Men, you can understand the atmosphere of what some of these jobs was like. The last 2 years with a verbally abusive manager, I had enough. I planned to take the summer off and think about the future. Doing research as to what I might do, I talked to a family friend, George Beck, who was with Andrus, Hatch, and Hetherington, now Research Capital Corporation. Apparently he and David Hetherington, who was branch manager at the time, decided that with my work experience, licensing certificates, I would be a good investment advisor. A plan was put in place to train with George, build my own clientele, and eventually take over his business. I started work September 1985, and that was also the month I met my husband, David. I have been with Research Capital and my husband for 36 years. I'm now a portfolio manager with over 165 million in assets, 300 clients, and I'm responsible for overseeing their individual financial needs and goals. And no, I still can't do math, but I have other skills. By 1990, I had grown my business and added 2 members to my family. Life was good, but a little narrow. I wanted to meet new people and take on challenges and give back to the community. Joining the Rotary Club of Toronto was a natural fit. My grandfather had helped create the club. My father was a member, as was George Beck, David Hetherington, Ken Sr. and Jr., and John Andras, who were all at Research at the time. I was the 10th woman to join, and there were still very mixed emotions about club members, about women, including my father, who felt if I was at work, I should be at home, and if I was at home, I should be at work, and how was Rotary going to fit into all this? I made it work. I attended the lunches, which was a must, and over the years, being involved in many committees, learning something new each time. I've been club president and president of the foundation, and that was only possible because I knew that club members would be there to support me, as was my family. The club has had a Camp Sweat Equity Weekend for over 60 years. Organizing the camp weekend, I call it Executive Retreat, has become my major project. The first time I went, it was still very much a men's club, but we have adapted. I remember with Michelle Guy driving up in time for breakfast on Saturday mornings, exchanging news and dues. This will be the second year that there will be no camp weekend and no exchanging of information. And I'm sorry about that, because I think that it exemplifies what being a Rotarian is. Is it the truth? People tend to speak honestly in a safe situation with friends. Is it fair to all concerned? All members of the club can participate. Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Absolutely. You cannot be involved in a camp weekend and not leave without having strengthened or created respect and friendship for your fellow campers. Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Absolutely. Again, involvement in the club weekend reduces mental stress and anxiety. It is a marvelous work experience, and we help 300 mothers and children have a place of respite who are affected by poverty, have a place where they can learn new skills and have a respite. So I hope to see you all at camp in 2022, and back to you, President John.
Thank you, Susan. Again, every week I'll say this. I just love hearing from our members, I thought I knew Susan pretty well, and I still learned some great things about an amazing woman who's been an incredible part of this club, an amazing president, both the foundation and the club, and what she does for Camp Skookaw is, and you all know how incredible it is to run that whole thing. So thank you for all you do, Susan, and thank you for being today's Let's Be Personal speaker. We all appreciate it. If any members want to get on the Let's Be Personal speaking list, please contact Don Bell. It's now time for one of my most favorite presidential roles. I would like to ask past President Kevin Power to introduce our latest new member. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, President John. It is my pleasure today to introduce Mark. Mark grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, where he worked in the construction industry for a number of years. Beginning as a laborer, Mark worked in asphalt and concrete crews and eventually succeeded to a supervisory position. Mark later graduated from MacEwan University in Edmonton with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy and Mathematics. He's currently completing his graduate degree in Sustainability Management at the University of Toronto. His work experience includes interning with 2 sustainable startup companies thus far. Mark's hobbies include traveling, motorcycling, reading, and enjoying good conversations with good friends and good wine. Mark has been a long believer in civic engagement and has formerly been a mentor to young men, a successful program coordinator with the Boys and Girls Club, and a Presidential Medal nominated student club president. He currently volunteers as a graduate student advisor at the University of Toronto. Welcome, Mark. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. I'm very happy to be here and to be joining your club. As if this moment, me becoming a Rotarian, wasn't memorable enough, this is also the first time I'm joining an organization while wearing my house slippers. And so, which I think adds to the specialness of this day. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I hope to meet each and every one of you in the near future and to do some good work together. Thank you again, and back to you, President John.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome. I do look forward to working with you and meeting you, and all the members that have joined during COVID. I thank you for your taking a leap of faith with us, and I assure you your life will change, and you will be ever thankful for the decision you made to join us, as we will to have you here. Now it's time for our guest speaker introduction. I would like to pass things over to Brian Westlake. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, President John. If we're into confessions, I have my slippers on too, Mark, so you're in good company. There's no more challenging topic at the moment than China and its astonishing rise in world importance. We're fortunate to have today a leading expert on this subject, made possible in the virtual format as Sarwar Kashmeri addresses us from his residence in New Hampshire. He also has a place in Niagara-on-the-Lake that he visits frequently. Sarwar is an international relations specialist, author, and commentator, noted for his expertise in U.S. global strategy and national security. He speaks frequently before business, foreign policy, and military audiences. He's the host of Polaris Live, featuring live conversations on the business and geopolitical impact of China's rapid rise to superpower status. I've listened on Tuesday mornings every week for the last several weeks to his interviews, and I commend these to you. They're excellent presentations and well worth your time, and they're available, I think, on YouTube after the live presentations. Sarwar has served in an advisory role to a number of international organizations in the US and UK. He's been a frequent speaker at the United States Military Academy at West Point. His writings have appeared in well-known periodicals such as the New York Times International, The Guardian, and he has made numerous TV appearances. He's formerly the CEO of a New York-based international technology company. Sarwar has also served as a communications advisor to several Fortune 100 companies. His third book, published in 2019, was Global's Grand Strategy, Weaving a New Silk Road to Global Primacy. Sarwar has degrees in aeronautical engineering from St. Louis University, and he's an honorary member of the Rotary Club of New York, which I see was club number 6 in the Rotary world. New York's Foreign Policy Association has asked him to write a report to recommend a China policy for the Biden administration, and we may hear a word or two about that as he speaks to us. Please join in welcoming Sarwar Kashmeri to our virtual podium as he addresses us on Canada, US, and China, geopolitics, and business. Welcome, Sarwar.
Brian, thank you very much. I hope my voice is coming through. Thank you for that gracious introduction. You know, it's not the first time you've introduced me, and I hope you never notice I change it a little bit each time and make it look more impressive. But thank you so much. And I must tell President John that I have been part of numerous virtual organizations and presentations, and this is by far the best organized and one inspiring one that I have sat through. So I wanted to congratulate the Rotary Club and Susan. That was quite a story that you told us. You know, I keep forgetting that I've been coming to Toronto for upwards of 40 years at this point. And my younger brother and I, when we decided to emigrate from India, he stayed up in Canada and I came down here. And Zuhair, who was far more talented and skilled, who died unfortunately 2 years ago, used to be the chief investigative reporter for the Globe and Mail. He used to be the chief research editor for National Bank Financials. So I kind of come to Canada shining on his glory, if you will. But I love your country, I love your city, and what more can I say? So what I would like to do, if this is okay, John, is I'd like to talk for about roughly 20 minutes. Because a lot of the firepower of presentations like these on headline topics, really comes in the Q&A. And I'm happy to fill in what else I want to talk about beyond the 20 minutes or so as we get into the Q&A. So let's start with that. And Brian, you kindly mentioned the report that I'm in the process of finishing for the Foreign Policy Association in New York. The charge was to recommend to the Biden administration a fresh policy on China. This report will be published the third week in June. And if anyone is interested in getting the announcement, you can log on to my website, kashmeri.com, and just sign up there, and I'll make sure that you get news of the presentation. For the report, I've interviewed or had conversations with about 18 people from China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe, USA, and I want to start with one of those people, just to put China in perspective. So what I'm going to try and do is put China in perspective, put America in perspective as it relates to China, and then see if I can talk for a while about Canada and the very special position it finds itself in between these two giants. So the person that I want to focus on, his name is Shan Weijian. He lives in Hong Kong. In 1965, the Cultural Revolution began under Mao Zedong. And as you recall, the entire economy of China was directed by the state. And the only thing it was capable of producing was poverty, right? So 65. So move on to 69. Shan Weijian was sent to Mongolia with 11, 12 million other teenagers to dig canals and to pick potatoes and so on. And he never thought that he would see the end of that. So you recall all of the millions of people died during the Cultural Revolution. China went backwards. Well, today, Shan Weijian runs a $44 billion asset management firm in Hong Kong. And listening to him is so inspiring, but it also reminds me that here is a person, and there are thousands more like him, who have lived that entire trajectory from the time when there was nothing in China besides poverty, who was picking potatoes in Mongolia, to today, when China is about to become, by GDP, the richest country in the world. And so I thought I'd start with Sean Waijian and just kind of put in perspective what's happened in China. So starting from there, 40 years ago, China today is approaching the largest GDP in the world. And Sean Waijian has a saying which I hadn't heard before. I asked him, I said, so what do we not understand between America and China? And he said, I think America doesn't really understand how capitalist China is. And China doesn't understand how socialist America is. And let me drill down on that a little bit. So China today, 2/3 of China's economy is private enterprise. Now, keeping in mind private enterprise is a little bit different in China than it is here, still, there are more billionaires in China today than in America. China's minting billionaires at 3 times the rate as they do in America. China is the largest trading nation in the world, right? So this China is very different from what it was when Waijian was picking potatoes just 40 years ago in Mongolia, right? So and he points out to a Chinese that, look, America has a fully developed social security safety net, something that we're trying to do in China. He says our safety net is underfunded. You don't know what money you get out when the money that you put in. And he says there's no capital gains tax in China, so the country is trying to figure out how to afford a social safety net. He said in America, if you're a billionaire, you pay capital gains tax. He said in China, you don't. So I'd never thought about it that way before. And he says at the end of this statement that here are 2 countries at daggers drawn. They don't like one another, but they don't even understand one another. So that's kind of where I thought that I would start. So in my book, China's Grand Strategy, thank you for mentioning it, Brian, I point out that China has followed a 3-step grand strategy, that it wanted to become rich, it wanted to make sure that no one would ever invade its coastline again, the best it could, and thirdly, to become the most connected and the most influential influential country in the world. So it's now finished its first target of becoming rich, right? You may know that over the last 30 years, China has raised 900 million people. 900 million people above poverty. This never happened in recorded history. 30 years ago, China's GDP per capita was about $310. Today, it is around $7,000 to $10,000. Right, still a far cry from Canada's and America's, but compared to just 30 years ago, it's a phenomenal rise. Right? So having done all that, right, it has also taken its military budget, which is about 1/3 of America's. America is about 900 billion, China's is about 300 billion, and it has poured it into space, ocean, air, weaponry to do one thing, which is sink the American Navy if it got within 1,000 kilometers of the Chinese coast. So what the listeners, the viewers today should know is that it is in times of conflict practically impossible for for an American Navy ship, large nuclear-powered aircraft carriers through which China projects its power, to come within 1,000 kilometers of the Chinese coastline. They will be sunk. In numerous military games, he is very famous for doing military games. What happens if China invades Taiwan, and on and on and on. In most of them, in a South China Sea battle, America loses. Right. These are military games that I'm talking about. So that's the situation with on the defense side. And again, my argument on China's grand strategy is to become rich, make its coastline inviolable, and then thirdly to become the most connected and become the most influential country in the world. And China's doing that by means of a project that is called the Belt and Road Initiative, where China has budgeted $1 trillion to create infrastructure, bridges, roads, seaport, land ports in over 130 countries, going through Central Asia, through Eastern Europe, through Western Europe, through Africa, and lately in the Caribbean. Right. So it started off as a project that only China was investing in. But now I know we have some people here from the Royal Bank of Canada and CIBC. There isn't a single large international bank that is now not funding this infrastructure. So that's where China is. Now, I should hasten to add that America is not disappearing anywhere. Don't worry. America, is still a powerful country, still the richest country in the world. It's got massive layers of universities, of research institutions, but most of all, it has the bond markets. I know there are people here from the market. So as you know, the US dollar is the currency of the world, right? The Chinese yuan today actually is used less in trading than the Canadian dollar is. The US dollar is roughly 90%, 85%, 90% of world trade. Canada is about 5%, and the yuan is about 4%. Right? If you take the bond market in Canada, which is increasingly offering products in the North American market and the European market, right? The Chinese bonds corporate bonds pay 200-300 basis points more than the Western bonds today, either in Europe or in America. But as you've been reading in the papers, a lot of these companies are state-owned corporations that are finding it hard to now pay their dividends. And people are trying to figure out what all this means. So in spite of all of this, the power of America rests in its soft power, which is culture, rests in the bond market, which supports the dollar, rests in it being a part of the steady, global, legally dominated power, so that you can't just say, hey, we're not going to pay these bonds and things change. So I wanted to put all of that in perspective, which brings me now to Canada. And this is something that you probably have thought about more than I have. But the question to me, and I think here about those poor diplomats that have been kidnapped, the Canadian diplomats who have been kidnapped, one of whom has been in a cell, I believe, for over 2 years. Right. So recently there were court hearings. Nobody was allowed to attend it, and all of this, most people think, is because Canada has, under an American warrant, arrested the CFO of Huawei, the telecommunications company, the Chinese biggest, one of the biggest in the world. And even though no one has said that, most people believe that that's why these diplomats are being held, so to let Canada know that we can't, you can't deal with us in this way, and so how does one go there? I'm reminded, and I offer this in closing. I'm reminded of what corporations do, when they reach a crossroad, when they have to make a go-no-go decision on an existential issue. You're right. There's a process called. Susan, you may have used this in your work, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, SWOT analysis, right? You get out on a retreat over a weekend and take your top executives, and then you sit and you talk about what are the company's strengths, weaknesses, and then you try to escalate the strengths, attenuate the weaknesses, and come out hopefully with the way forward and some progress going forward. So if one does that, right, for the Canadian relationship with, let's say, China and with America, clearly a strength is that America is right next door. right, is China's biggest trading partner. And I made some quick notes. It's not just the biggest trading partner, but it's by far the biggest trading partner. $337 billion a year versus China at 18 billion, the UK at 15, and Japan at roughly 9. So that's a huge strength. Right next door, you have this situation. But then there's China, right, which has got Canadian diplomats, which, if it follows form, may do other things to put pressure on Canada. And so how does one deal with that? Well, if I was leading the SWOT analysis, I would also focus, and I hate to say this as an American, on the body politic and governance in America. Right? So there's a big talk about Mr. Biden, who I really do like, re-entering the world. America was starting to disengage from the world, right? The community of nations. And so now we're back. Well, if you followed the last 2 or 3 days, it doesn't look, at this point anyway, that Mr. Trump is disappearing anytime soon. Most of the actions that America is taking to rejoin the world, climate, etc., NATO, are by executive action, meaning there's no law, that nothing goes through Congress. This is the president signing papers saying, executive order, I'm ordering we rejoin the world. So 2 years from now, at the midterm elections, at this rate, it's a 50-50 that America might lose, or the Democrats might lose Congress. And then what happens? A new president comes in and signs a piece of paper, says we're disentangling again, right? Because nothing has gone through Congress. Not that this is going to happen, but if I was leading a corporate retreat with doing a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threat analysis, I would say, well, so what do we do then? And I think that situation is applicable in countries like Canada, who are rich countries, but who are smaller countries. You've probably all been seeing what's been happening in Australia, right? Australia has been asking China to open up and admit people to figure out where the pandemic really came from, right? And China doesn't like that. So Australia is starting to talk about China's treatment of its minority Muslim population in Xinjiang. And China doesn't like that. So it's starting to cut trade with Australia, right? No more wine, no more coal, no more, so on. It hasn't been able to do that with iron ore and liquid natural gas because China really needs that. Australia is a big. So I wonder if one of the ways in which Canada might think is to set up a grouping of countries like Australia and Canada, countries in South and Latin America that kind of find themselves in the same position, and think about ways in which one can that they can think their way ahead between these two behemoths of America and China. Right, the Asian nations, which, by the way, are going to be the driving factor in growth and demand over the next 30 years, right? That's where the growth is going to come from. So they've founded a number of years ago an organization called ASEAN, which bands together 16, I believe, Asian nations. And I just wonder whether an organization that finds itself in between China, the US, and what's happening around the world might be something to think about. I have no real answers, excepting saying that it's not a good place to be in. And if I was those diplomats in China, I'd be really concerned. I speak very highly of China because you cannot get away from what they've done. But I have a situation now where I may want to and be able to go to Xinjiang, where the Muslim population is being supposedly civil liberties are being, and I don't know. I don't feel comfortable. So it's a very puzzling situation on the one hand. But do we really understand it? I am with Sean, Judy. I don't think we understand China very well. I don't think China understands us very well. So I have a lot more to say, but I would like to stop, John, if it's okay, and I'd like to open it up for questions. Over to you, John.
Oh, thank you very much. Fascinating. I could listen to this forever. You're right. We're in a very, very interesting situation because we are just a little guy. We may be a rich country, but we are a small player. And when something happens like the two men in jail, you feel helpless. I was going to ask one question. We know that a lot of very large, important Canadian corporations are being bought by Chinese companies. I'm sure they're doing that in every country around the world, not just in Canada. From a political point of view, or is that something to be worried about, or it's just business and money?
So, I'm basically a capitalist free trader at heart, right? So that's where I come in answering this question. So I think there are two sides to it. I think that countries need to look at their national security before they agree to this kind of a deal. I believe that first of all, nothing can stop China's rise, right? There's much talk in America about stopping China, Cold War, all of this. I consider that to be hogwash. China is continuing on, the trajectory is set. And all I can say in answer to that is one should just watch where one is going. I think just analyze each deal for national security. I will tell you about one of the recommendations I make in my report, which will I know bring a firestorm down on my head, which is that America should join China's Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure building project. And the rationale I give is that President Biden has asked for $1.3 trillion to recreate America's infrastructure, 2/3 of which, by the way, roughly is rusting. There isn't a month that goes by without a bridge connecting two important points starting to blocked because it may crash. Happened again yesterday. So I don't think Mr. Biden's going to get $1.3 trillion, not even close. The American Society of Engineers says that it'll take roughly $2.5 trillion for 10 years to rebuild America's infrastructure. So there's this huge gap in between, right? So one of my thoughts is, why not fill it up carefully, as I mentioned earlier, with China? That has the expertise to build infrastructure, that has, Wall Street's raised a lot of money for infrastructure, but it hasn't gone anywhere. What a nice way, if it can be worked out, to work on a project together with China. And by the way, it's not unprecedented. 1/3 of Boston's commuter cars are being built by a company that's part of the Belt and Road Initiative. In Los Angeles and in Virginia, there are these cranes that only China can build, big, huge gantry cranes that lift containers off container ships. And I should tell you that these new container ships have 20,000 containers on them. A crew of 6 driving a boat with 22,000 containers. So these gantry cranes are 15 floors tall. And China has the expertise in building it, and they're being used at all the big ports in America. So that's where I come out, John.
Excellent. Thank you. How about a question here from our new member? What are your thoughts on the human rights violations happening in China's Xinjiang province? And what can the U.S. and Canada do about it, if anything?
This is a subject on which we could have a Rotary Club meeting going on for 2 days and still not reach an answer on it, right? So let me try and in small time capsule give you my thoughts on it. First of all, there is no question, I believe, in my mind that there are human rights, if you will, violations taking place. I find myself on the side of Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet, who, as you know, abstained from voting the parliamentary motion to call what's happening in Xinjiang genocide. for all the reasons that I believe that also. So, yes, human rights violations. But there is a stream of thought by some very learned people, of which I am not, that the press in the West does not put what's happening in Xinjiang into perspective. Right? Take the United States, the invasion of Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, right? Depending on what numbers you pick, I mean, we had thousands of brave Americans who were killed, but roughly 600,000 to 700,000 to 1 million people, civilians mostly, were killed in these two wars. Most of them Muslims, right? All of the wise people in Washington said, don't do this. But America decided to do it. The argument is the world doesn't really call this human rights violations and or genocide because of what happened on 9/11 and a focused attack on America by terrorists. And so America's way of dealing with that was to invade other countries and kill as many terrorists as possible. This stream of thought says, so Xinjiang, China is doing the same thing, only its approach is different. It's putting these people in camps to re-educate them, to convert them, and maybe even do horrible things to them. But the world does not put this in the perspective and give the space to China that it does to America. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I'm giving you two sides of this situation, right? And there's a third side, which is how Israel handles it. Israel's a tiny country, and it's surrounded by, and so it's decided the best way to handle the terrorism is to divide up Palestine into tiny bits and pieces that are not connected, control each one. So there are models of handling terrorism, and one needs to put them in perspective. So I'm not going to offer any more than that, but that's how I would answer that question. It's not an easy question.
Wow. This is fascinating. And again, you're right. We could talk about these for days because this is, number one, it's interesting, but number two, it affects every one of us. It's even in our daily lives, we're affected by the enormity of the United States, the enormity of China, and each country, even us, we all react and play the game differently based on our own just culture.
Yes.
So it's fascinating. I'm trying to, do you have any other questions? With Biden coming in, can we expect anything different between the Canadian and China relations? Will that ease things up a little bit or keep things pretty much the same?
Did they say America and UK? I'm sorry.
Now that Biden is with the Biden administration, can we expect a change in the Canadian-China relations?
Canadian-China relations?
Yeah.
Wow. I wonder how I would...
interesting question. That's a heavy one.
It is a very interesting question because you'll pardon my phone pinging. I just need to switch it off. It's difficult because I would hope in the background that there is a lot of talk going on between Canada and the US, right? Because this whole thing started with one PowerPoint presentation to a company in Iran, where the CFO of Huawei's staff made a presentation to a company to do business with China. The Americans, my side says, so that company was bypassing American sanctions and dealing in dollars for China. And that presentation was a PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they're being, people are starting to look at it and so on. But the point is that I believe that America and Canada should reach some form of negotiated agreement which allows the CFO to go home and for these two diplomats to come back. I'm sure that this is something that can be negotiated because it's causing an unnecessary amount of friction, leave alone the families of these poor people. God alone knows what they're going through. But this needs to be settled. And I think it can be settled. And I think it should be settled. So that's where I am on that, and I'm hoping Mr. Biden will do that with Canada.
Well, I have many friends in Hong Kong and a few in mainland China, and I worry about them. Like as a Canadian, are you a target?
Yes. By the way, talking about Hong Kong, if I may just throw in something here, this is how complicated this situation is. And again, Susan, you're a portfolio manager, and you've done quite a portfolio you have. All of us, I'm sure, when China took over Hong Kong, and may I use that word took over Hong Kong, because I don't think there's any end game there. I think that end game has already happened. Everyone expected, Hong Kong is the conduit through which China gets its financing. What's going to happen? Well, Hong Kong is booming today. Booming. It's it's the most expensive real estate market in the world, aside from other parts of the booming, right? Twice per square foot price of London, Hong Kong. So think about that for a moment. It has ramifications, in my mind, on strategy for Taiwan, which China says belongs to it, just as Hong Kong. But that's a different part of this lecture. So,
do you expect that we may have to worry about Taiwan as well, or is it able to hold its own for now?
I think we have to worry about it. I think we have to worry about it if Taiwan starts to declare its independence. I find myself in the camp of those people who say that should Taiwan do that, China will invade and take over Taiwan. Right? I mean, it's a horrible, horrible thing to contemplate, but China's kind of drawn a line on the sand and said, listen, Taiwan and Hong Kong are part of China. So I think the best thing that we can do, which is what Mr. Biden is doing, and I think Prime Minister Trudeau's doing, is saying, okay, so Taiwan is Taiwan, it's a democracy, and you are China. So let's keep talking about it that way and keep it going, keep it moving.
Yes, because who knows where it could go. I mean, they do what they do, and then the response does what the response does. Who knows where that could be quite Well, I think we could ask questions all day long. I do want to thank you so much, Sarwar, for your incredibly informative and very interesting talk. I think we'd even like to have you back in a little while to have a tech shop, maybe in a year and a half or so, see where we're at in that time would be amazing.
And how wrong I was. But I hope before that we can have a drink in Toronto when all of this craziness lifts up.
Well, we have lunch every Friday when we are allowed to meet at the Royal York or at the National Club. And you are obviously most welcome to join us anytime. Just give us an email, Carol, and let you know if you're in town. You're always welcome in our home, that's for sure.
Well, I have very warm memories of the National Club. I've told Brian it's a sister club of the Union League Club in New York, to which I belong. I've stayed at the National Club often and just love it.
Well, we do too. It's a little gem here in the city that we all love very much.
And may I say that I'm really deeply honored that you would give me all of this time. And I've really, really enjoyed this. I hope you find it of value. And so thank you very much. And over to you, John.
Thank you. And we do. One of the things that makes our club so special is getting high caliber speakers such as yourself on a wide range of topics that are really important and topics that some of us aren't really in our day-to-day life would not have access to. And I think it makes us all richer to hear all these things that we're hearing from these amazing speakers, again, like yourself. And it's part of what makes our club great is being able to attract. And so we thank you so much for giving us your valuable time. And in honor of that, a donation has been made in your honor to the Canadian Landmine Foundation to help remove landmines so a child can go safely to school. The Canadian Landmine Foundation aims to realize the Ottawa Treaty banning anti-personnel landmines by clearing mine-infested lands and offering hope and practical support to mine victims in the world's most mine-affected communities. This donation is made in partnership with the Rotary Club of Toronto's International Service Committee.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. President. And that is one of my favorite charities. It was such a great accomplishment, one in which your country played a major role, as I recall.
And if you may, our club also has made, this has been very important to our club, and we've been made some very large contributions, hands-on even as well over in Cambodia.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next Wednesday, as Friday being a long weekend, as we all go to the cottage to celebrate the Queen's birthday, we are having our Wednesday President's Cocktail Party. So I encourage you all to come at 5:30 on Google Meets, or it might be a Zoom. We're still talking to Jay about that. And it's going to be a really good, we're going to talk about May 24 and what it means and history and traditions, and fellowship teams putting together a good little program for us. So I hope to see you all there. Feel free to invite friends and family because I think it'll be fun. Friday the 21st, due to the Victoria Day holiday, there will not be a meeting. The next Friday Rotary meeting will be May the 28th. And our member recognition committee has a very special lunch planned. We will be honoring our longstanding members of 25 plus years. So save the date. And if you're one of those 25 plus members, please make sure you've responded to the email sent previously by today if you can, if you have not already done so. We would like, we have certain arrangements we need to make for the event. And I'm telling you, the team has, I put a request out there for something special for the 28th. I wanted this to happen. And the team has come up with this, you're going to be blown away. That's all I can say. And I look forward to everyone being there. Unfortunately, I can't be there because that's my move day got moved. Anyways, please feel free to invite guests and share links to connect. However, have them connect with the office in order to be admitted to the meeting. So we're at the end. I know we got a little bit of disappointing news from the province, and we are going to be in lockdown a little bit longer, but I don't think that's a big surprise to everybody. I think you pretty much expected that to happen. But let's be good Canadians and go outside and enjoy the fresh air. We can put up with another 2 weeks of this, and it's for the greater good. And it's going to be a great, gorgeous weekend in the 20s. Toronto has the largest ravine system in the entire world, of any city in the world. So there's lots to do out there. You know, there's the waterfront. And if you're lucky enough to be able to get to the cottage, I hope you enjoy. Just have fun and be safe. And you know, we won't be getting in groups yet, but it's coming. It's coming real soon, everybody. And if you haven't got your jab yet, get your jab. I think at the end of that, the meeting is over. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Thank you.